Welcome to In the Garden. I'm Melissa Siegel, your moderator, and our experts today are Kat Kahn and Randy Parker. We are Montgomery County Master Gardeners with the University of Maryland Extension. Some of the services we provide include our speakers group, demonstration gardens, youth gardening programs, therapeutic horticulture, special events, and Ask a Master Gardener, to name a few. Today we have Kat Kahn, who will talk about Harvest Share program, which she started this year. Kat?
Hi, my name is Kat Kahn, and I am a Master Gardener, but I also started a program. Actually, we started the end of last year, but it was our inaugural year, and we were we didn't have our plans quite together, but Harvest Share asked backyard and community gardeners to grow a little extra in their gardens and then donate the produce to food assistance providers in the community that would then redistribute it. Since COVID, the number of people that don't know where their next meal is coming from is estimated at 115,000 people in this county alone, with 42,000 of those being children. And although we've started to see a little bit of an economic uptake with people getting back to work, this problem is going to stay around for a while. So how it worked is that we set up 20 different collection sites in the county where we asked gardeners to drop off their surplus. And then we found a food assistance provider that was very, very close by and got our drivers to drop that off. They would then distribute that to people in need. And the lofty goal was 1,000 pounds donated, and we topped 10,000 pounds last year. So we are deep in planning mode for a great summer season, and even have a few people sharing their cool season greens with us. But there are lots of opportunities to get involved, whether you're a seed starter or a driver or a gardener that finds himself with way too many tomatoes. We have a job for you. If you go to our website, www.harvestsharemd.org, you can see a lot of the opportunities we have to volunteer, and also see some special events that we've started this year to give back to our gardeners. Starting on May 7th, the weekend of May 7th and 8th, you could drop off any surplus seedlings you have to redistribute to gardeners, or you can pick up some seedlings yourself to put in the garden. And we were planning to have over 500 seedlings available for pickup over 2 weekends. The first weekend, as I said, was May 7th and 8th. That's going to be held up in Aspen Hill. And the following weekend, on the 14th and 15th, we'll have that event in front of Wooten High School in Rockville. We also have a monthly speaker, actually Master Gardeners as well, experts on vegetable gardening. And we'll have a Zoom presentation the first Wednesday of every month, and it will be timely, focused on what needs to be done in the garden that month. So May 5th at 7 p.m., we'll have Terry Valenti talking about amazing, super productive summer vegetables. So a great way to start off the summer season.
Thank you so much. You've done such a wonderful job putting that together, and we're all really appreciative. Okay, so you can contact us if you have any gardening questions or questions regarding any of the programs we've mentioned and have on our website, which I think the link should be posted shortly. Please remember to include your email in case we need to follow up. You can also view previously answered questions from In the Garden on YouTube. Since our last program, we've received the following questions. Let's see. The first one is about Forsythia, and the person who submitted it is Karen Torres from Montgomery County, and she asks, what is wrong with my Forsythia? How can I control it? And it looks pretty awful, actually, in the picture. They're galls. The galls in the picture are Forsythia gall disease. Galls are like tumor-like plant growths, often caused by pathogens. The disease is caused by the bacteria Pseudomonas sevastanoe, think I did that right, which affects olive, oleander, and ash trees and other woody plants. There is no proven cure other than pruning away and destroying affected branches whenever possible. But be sure to sanitize your tools between cuttings and perhaps removing plants that have been severely affected altogether. It's recommended not to replant with similarly susceptible plants in any area where an affected plant has been removed. And prevention is the best course. Choose healthy specimens for planting in a soil and environment suited to their needs. Well-drained, pH 6.8 to 7.7, sun to light shade. Maintain bed sanitation and prune the plants annually right after blooming to remove dead wood and promote good air circulation. And cut old stems back to close to the ground rather than part way down to avoid promoting very dense branching that will impede air circulation. Our next question is about black-eyed Susans. Kat is going to be our expert on this, and I'll read the question real quickly. I'd like to plant black-eyed Susans in my backyard that survive from year to year and spread to form clumps like my neighbors have. However, every time I plant the black-eyed Susan, the leaves turn brown and the plants die shortly afterward. What am I doing wrong? What should I be doing?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't assume it's your fault because there are a lot of things that can go wrong in the garden. Even when we take our best to plant and compost and give that plant the absolute optimal place for growing. And it could be that the variety that you've chosen is really the problem. There are multiple varieties of the Rudbeckia, and some are much more prone to disease. The classic black-eyed Susan is Rudbeckia hirta, and it can actually be an annual or biannual or just very short-lived. So if you're noticing a dieback or they're not coming back after 2 years, it may actually be the variety of plant that you purchased. Another problem with your plants may be that it's a Goldstrom, Rudbeckia fulgida Goldstrom variety, which is much more susceptible to disease. And it sounds like that might be what's happening to your plant. It's okay, and then you start seeing, these browning leaves. The good news is that you can have probably a nice stand of clump forming, spreading Rudbeckia like your neighbor if you make another selection. And there are lots and lots of choices. The good news is that many of them are not rabbit and deer food, that they tend to stay away from them. They attract butterflies, they're low maintenance, drought resistant, and also disease resistant. So perhaps a better choice would be another Rudbeckia fulgida, Diami. It's stronger and much more disease resistant. There's another finer one called the Rudbeckia laciniata, or cutleaf coneflower. It can be very large. It's great around wet areas. It has a landslide type leaf, but you want to have room because this species can grow to over 5 feet tall and as tall as 12 feet. So you don't really want to put this in your neat, tidy foundation bed. Another low maintenance choice is called Rudbeckia variety speciosa. And that is called it's a showy black-eyed Susan, has a large head, and the flowering is so profuse in that variety that it really almost covers the leaves. So depending on what you're looking for, there is a variety out there for you. Stay away from the Rudbeckia Goldstrom, which is probably what you're talking about. It's although it's very commonly sold, it may not be the best choice.
Thank you so much. Really great answers. Our next question is from David in Gaithersburg about hydrangea leaf browning. His question is, my smooth hydrangea began to leaf out, but then the edges of the new leaves started turning brown. Brown spots appeared on the new leaves and the new growth shriveled up. I have not applied any herbicides or fertilizers, and I don't think my neighbor has applied anything either. What is the problem, and how can I correct it? The short answer is the leaves were probably damaged by cold temperature. But if it happens later in the year, this damage could be caused by dehydration or a disease. The smooth hydrangea, also known as wild hydrangea or seven bark, forms a low mound of heart-shaped green leaves and sturdy stems that turn dark yellow in the fall. The plant foliage has a coarse texture and grows to about 3 to 4 feet tall with a wider spread by the time fall comes around. The flowers are uniform, slightly flattened and displayed on top of sturdy stalks, and when they open, they're slightly green. The color changes to creamy white as they mature and then brown as they wilt. This species of hydrangea does not change the blossom color when the soil pHs change, so don't put coffee grounds in the ground. You might actually hurt it. It's an understory plant and prefers some shade and lots of moisture but well-draining soil. One of the most popular cultivars is Annabelle, and this cultivar is very popular in the South. Common problems include leaf spot and powdery mildew. So lots of diseases that infect hydrangeas will harm the leaves, in particular root rot, leaf spots, and powdery mildew. The majority of these diseases that harm hydrangeas will not actually kill the plant, but it can affect its health and appearance. However, you should take these things seriously. Some of the most common to watch out for are funguses like armillaria root rot, which will destroy roots and prevent water from reaching the leaves and blooms. Another common problem is the Cercospora fungus, which will attack foliage and cause leaf curling and death. If a disease is believed to be the cause of hydrangea leaves curling, it's important to treat the issue as soon as possible with a fungicide spray. Smooth hydrangeas need to have more water than any other species of hydrangea. When dehydrated, the leaves of smooth hydrangeas will rapidly deteriorate. The leaves curl and start to decay and turn brown. These shrubs thrive when given at least 1 inch of water a week and even more when the weather's hot and dry. And if you need to rejuvenate a wild hydrangea plant, prune the shrub to 6 inches in the springtime. It blooms on new wood and should produce stems and new blossoms by the summer. Our next question is submitted by Sean, and it's about rain gardens. And her question is, I have a space between my house and our neighbors that is draining poorly. We have 2 downspouts that dump all the rain into this area. I had initially suggested a French drain to solve the issue, but no one seemed to jump on the suggestion. Well, my neighbor ended up cutting down his beautiful Japanese red maple, thinking it would help solve some of the problem, and would like to just throw pea gravel between the houses. I am thinking of just adding back soil, regrading it, and throwing grass seed back in the area to capture some of the water. Recently, however, I learned about rain gardens, and I'm wondering if this would be a good space for one and what you would plant. My only concern is that there may not be enough room between the houses. Would you happen to have any suggestions? Ronnie?
Okay, this is really a great question because it's a very, very common problem for many of us living in semi-urban areas where homes seem to be constructed very close to each other, and there isn't always room for the kind of drainage that we need. Rain gardens are a great idea. They always need to be located downhill, away from the house or foundation, and at least 10 feet away. So let's start by looking first. So there are 2 things. First, getting the water out of the space between your house. And the first thing we would suggest, and probably the easiest thing, would be to add flexible downspout extenders so you can get the water away and direct it toward a lower point, I think your front yard in this case. You could look into a rain garden, and it's a good idea, but it needs to be away from the house, away from the space between the houses. And rain gardens have certain requirements. First is that you need to have well-draining soil. So if your soil, like a lot of our soil, is clay-based, if it's clay soil, you will have to first amend to improve the soil. So that's a long-term solution. It will not solve your problem now. The other thing you can do to deal with the runoff is to try to slow the flow of water away. Once you've directed it away, to slow the flow away from your house. And to do that, you may want to replace some of your turf grass with deeper rooted plants such as sedges that will tolerate not only the moisture and grow well in wet soil, but also will tolerate inundations and won't just wash away. So turf grass, yes, will help slow the water a little bit, but I think sedges are what we recommend to help absorb the water better. Turf grass also is okay for shady and sunny spots, so the lighting is important. In terms of the actual plants, if you do decide to go forward with a rain garden, if you have the right conditions for that, again, well away from the structures, 10 feet or more away downhill, in that basin where the water is going to collect, you will want to have deep-rooted native plants. And there are several plants that you can use for this. The Maryland Native Plant Society is a good source for information both about plants and lots of native plant sales in the area where you can acquire those plants. As far as the problem area itself, you suggested maybe pea gravel, and we would suggest instead larger rocks because small stones are likely to just get washed away if you have an inundation. So you may want to put larger rocks or some sedge. But basically, you want no water in that space between your two houses. And the final thought is possibly a rain barrel. If you tend to have a lot of water, as you seem to in this space, a rain barrel may not be adequate, even a network of rain barrels. Make sure you have an outlet for your rain barrel so that the excess water, when the barrel fills up, does have a place to go. So bottom line, use just a flexible downspout extender immediately to get the water away from the house, and then big rocks, and then look into the rain garden options, and also the slope leading to the rain garden basin, replacing the turf with sedges.
Did you want to talk about the Rainscapes program at the county level?
Yes, the county does have a Rainscapes program. The county has a subsidy program for rain barrels. You can find them on the Department of Environmental Protection website.
Great. Thank you so much. Our next question is submitted by Leanne in Montgomery County. Her question is, my neighborhood common property has several creeks with serious erosion problems, and I'm working to plant vegetation that would help stabilize the banks. What kind of plants would work best on the site, which is shaded by deciduous trees in the late spring through fall? Kat?
Well, first of all, from your picture, Leanne, I applaud you for trying to do something. This is a big, big project. This is really probably something that you need to work with the homeowners association on. And perhaps if this is it's hard to tell from the picture, but if this is a stream bed, maybe there's an organization out there that would want to know about this too. Is it a tributary of, off the Muddy Branch watershed? They do a lot of work with erosion prevention. What can you as a homeowner in the development do? Well, first, at least get the permission from your homeowners association to do something. Because it's kind of unclear whether this is just, the border of your property and a common area. But that being said, even though it's a big project, there are some things that you can do to certainly slow down further erosion and stabilize these banks. to keep those trees alive. As the roots become more and more exposed on those trees, you'll eventually lose them. A really simple thing that you can do is to provide a buffer away from that. We'll call it a stream, a stream of water at least. In the picture, it looks like mowing has occurred all the way up until that bank. So there's nothing to slow down any kind of runoff you may have from the rain. So letting grass grow taller, replacing that turf grass with some taller, water-loving sedges would actually probably do a lot just to keep this from getting worse. You need not only a water absorbing, you need the roots from those plants to hold on to the soil to keep it from denuding anymore. You could also use some woody plants, shrubs that are water loving to plant as understory. It mentions that these trees actually, once they leaf out, provide a good amount of shade to that bank in the spring and summer. So you want to make sure you're looking at plants that will tolerate that. So understory plants that like wet. Betula nigra, or the river birch, is a beautiful tree that actually thrives on water as long as it gets some sun. Sweet magnolia, Magnolia virginiana, is also a woody shrub that loves water, has a pretty magnolia flower, although don't think magnolia tree. This really is a sort of very free-form shrub, but those roots will soak up a lot of the water before it hits this area. Another suggestion is the red twig dogwood, which is another shorter woody plant. It does well with wet feet. Ferns would also be a good choice too. There's lots of ferns that are native to Maryland. One or two tend to spread a little more than others. You want to make sure that these aren't the favorites of the deer in our area, or you're just really feeding the deer by planting them. But I know that the royal fern and the ostrich fern, which gets fairly large, are not delicacies to deer, that they tend to leave them alone. So those would be good choices too. There's a lot that needs to be done here, but as a homeowner, I think that would be a good start. Just trying to get a buffer in there to slow down further erosion and get someone in to really look at fixing some of this problem.
Thank you, Kat. Their next question is submitted by A. Rivera, and she says, recently, while gardening in my backyard, I found the attached looking worm, and I just wanted to confirm if it's harmless and useful, a worm, or something else. Looking forward to hearing from you. So based on the photo that you provided, it appears you may have a stinkworm or green worm. Those are the common names, and it's actually native to the Asian Peninsula, but may have become established in the United States by anglers for its use as catfish bait. It can be found on sandy banks of rivers, but is adaptable to different types of environments. These earthworms are dark olive, greenish brown, or grayish green in appearance, in comparison to the pink, brown, reddish European earthworms that we find in the ground most often, normally seen in the northeastern U.S. soils. When handled, they tend to curl in a tight coil when removed from the soil, and they can release a strong odor when they're agitated. They're not harmful to humans, but they do pose a problem on golf courses, where as a result of their voracious appetites, they leave castings all over the putting greens. Although there are not a lot of studies on this specific earthworm, there is some cause for concern that this species may outcompete other insect communities, such as the European earthworms and millipedes, for food resources. Thank you for that question. Our next question is about lawn herbicides. I live in Montgomery County. This is from Stephanie Hollis. I live in Montgomery County, and I wanted to find out who can help me in regards to my lawn and its weed control. I have so many weeds, and I don't want to put down any weed killer that's a pesticide because I have Pomeranian puppies, and they like to play outside. I'm just afraid they might get poisoned if I used pesticides on the lawn. So if someone could help me out, I'd really appreciate it. I think I'd like to find something that's organic and with no poison. Ronnie, would you like to take this question?
Sure. Stephanie, thank you for that question. It actually comes at a good time because Montgomery County recently passed a law banning the use on lawns of synthetic pesticides that are harmful to the environment, humans, and animals. Only organic products can be used. This law includes synthetic herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. It does not stop the sale of these products, however. So if you see a product at a store, don't assume that it's okay to use it. Approved organic products will have the following certification logos on their label and state, for instance, OMRI listed for organic use. And that's OMRI for Organic Materials Review Institute, I believe. Or exempt from EPA labeling under the federal laws on insecticides, fungicides, and I think rodents, or products listed for organic use. These organic products use active ingredients such as vinegar, corn gluten, potassium salts, fatty acids, essential oils of herbs such as cinnamon, clove, rosemary, and so on. And these are generally safe for pets. You should be careful, though, that even though organic products are considered safe to use, they can still irritate eyes and skin. So it's really, really important with these and any products that you apply to your gardens to follow the directions very carefully and precisely. Some websites that will provide a list of organic products that are pet friendly are weedkillerguide.com, which has pet friendly weed killers listed, as well as the 5 best pet friendly weed killers. You can also look at Pet Safe Lawn Fertilizer on caninejournal.com. Most product labels will list the types of weeds that it will control. You should really look at these very carefully. However, in order to pick the right product, you need to know what kind of weeds you have in your lawn. And the University of Maryland Extension Service has a list of common weeds to help you identify these weeds. You should also note that weeds tend to favor certain soil conditions, and the Extension Service also provides a list of weeds according to soil conditions that will help you identify which weeds you have. A yard without weeds, of course, is what everybody wants, but that can be very difficult and rare. I think your main challenge, however, is your puppies. There are things you can do to reduce or to make it more challenging for weeds to germinate in your lawn. And the Department of Environmental Service has a website that provides guidance to reduce weeds from growing in your yard, and so that it's safe for your puppies. Some of these include that you should mow high, 3.5 to 4 inches, and have your grass be tall, so that it can shade out and compete with other plants. Also outcompete weeds by overseeding with grass seed and adding organic material each year, such as compost. Only water during dry periods. Frequent light watering causes more weeds. Stop adding weed and feed chemicals. They're only costing you, and they don't do anything to promote healthy plants or soil. Hand pull your weeds. Remember, clover is good for your soil. It's not a weed. And then patch up bare areas. Don't leave them open for weeds. Patch them up with a handful of compost mixed with grass seeds. Last but not least, improving the quality of soil in your yard will further help create a less conducive environment for weeds to germinate. By performing a soil test, you can find out what your soil pH is and any nutrients that it's lacking so that you can amend your soil properly. You can do this also through the University of Maryland Extension, which is a great all-purpose site no matter what your problem. But it does provide organic lawn care guidelines that will help your lawn be healthy and also make your lawn safe for your puppies.
Thank you so much. There's also the question number 8 is submitted by Mary in Montgomery County. She shows a picture of a pretty weed, and she wants to know how she can control it and what it is. So I thought you might want to talk to that too.
Yes, so I don't want to go into pretty because, goodness, they're all pretty to me, I have to say. But some of them really can be too much, and this is one. This is a weed. It's ground ivy, or creeping Charlie. It's a perennial weed, which means it keeps coming back. It's not going to go away easily. It's low-growing, creeping plant that roots at the node, so it doesn't necessarily need flowers to spread. It has a distinct odor when crushed. The stems are square in its cross-section. It has opposite leaves and scalloped, rounded, and kidney-shaped leaves that are about 1/2 to 1.5 inches in diameter. And the picture is really quite descriptive. As I said, mostly it spreads by creeping stems that root at the node, but can also spread by seeds, flowers, etc. It prefers damp, shady areas, but can also tolerate full sun. So really, it grows just about anywhere. So in terms of managing this in the lawns, it's important to maintain a healthy and dense turf that can compete and prevent weed establishment. And as I mentioned just a little bit earlier, to do that, you need to be cutting your grass high and using a lot of seeds for your grass so that your turf is dense. You can hand pull these weeds or use an appropriate weeding tool to control them. But remember that they do spread through the nodes, so you have to get the whole thing, and it can be a little difficult. If you really want to use herbicides, if you're determined that that's what's going to do it, then you should use it as a last resort because of risks to people, animals, and environment. But also be very careful to read the label when you use it. If you choose this option, spot treat your weeds with a liquid selective post-emergent broadleaf weed killer applied when the weeds are actively growing. Look for a product with one or more of these ingredients: 4D, Mecoprop, dicamba, or triclophil. But again, this dicamba is something that, if it gets in the roots of your trees, will damage them. So I think when you get to herbicides, you really, really need to pay a lot of attention, make sure you get exactly the right thing for the right spot, and use it in the right quantities. So definitely check the certifications and directions, handful if you can, and keep your lawn dense.
Thank you so much. Great advice. The next question is submitted by Ann in Montgomery County. And she says, why does my red maple have this suckering growth at the base? Based on the tree size, it's not old. See photo of the tree next to the leaf compost bin. I plan to prune the suckers away, but should I be concerned that the tree is under stress or dying? So some landscape plants produce vigorous upright stems that become troublesome because they outcompete better formed branches and shade out the rest of the plant. These remarkably fast growing upright stems are called suckers if they come from the root system. Remove the top of the sucker before making your final cut at the base of the tree. And the best time to try removing these suckers is late winter and early spring before the new growth begins. You want to be careful to avoid injuring the main trunk when you first cut. Something that's interesting is if you look at the photo and you see the ring around the tree, they're all coming out at the same level. So possibly that tree had been grafted. And I have some experience with a lemon tree that was grafted. There was a 100-year freeze and the tree froze down to the ground. And when it came back, all these suckers came up from the part that it was grafted to, and not the actual tree that was above it. And it was a totally different type of lemon. I thought that was really interesting. So you can use a glove to pull away the leaf part, and then make closer cuts further down, just to where you see the V, where the sucker's coming up from the plant. And our last question that had been submitted earlier was, this is a plant verification ID and how to get rid of it. Kat, did you want to talk about it? Kat?
I'm here.
Okay.
I said it's one of those, another beautiful weed. If you use if you use the term weed to mean a plant in a place where you do not want it. The ID is Corydalis incisa or incised fumort. And yes, it is invasive. It's considered a tier 1 invasive by the state of Maryland, but is actually was identified in the New York area in 2005, and is actually quite rapidly spread to the mid-Atlantic. And you say, well, what's this, what harm is it doing? This beautiful flower that covers a large, might cover a large barren area. But what it does is that it squeezes out and removes the resources for native plants. If there is no creature out there that eats it, it will continue to take over, and it's a threat to our native biodiversity. So one of the reasons that it spreads so readily is that it's kind of interesting is as the plant seeds, it forcefully ejects the seeds from the flowers. So the wind can pick up these seeds and take them wherever it wants. And they also attract ants, which actually disperse the seeds as well. It's tricky to try and reduce its numbers. It's really mechanical removal is what you should do. Try to get those weeds removed before they go to seed, these flowers removed before they go to seed, so we don't have those seeds dispersing so rapidly. There isn't really information on herbicides yet, but that always should be a last resort in removing an invasive species. You are limited to, you aren't supposed to move it, sell it, transport it to a tier 1 invasives. I hope that helps. I guess try to replace it with something native. Try to get in there and dig it out while you can before it spreads and squeezes out some of our native plants. But it is pretty.
Thank you, Kat. I also wanted just to give a shout out to some of our newest Master Gardener interns who did some of the research for us today. Sean, Mary, Cindy, Anne, Leanne, and Lisa. To submit a question, go to our link. It should be on the screen. Please enter as much detail as possible. Photos are welcome and really important. Cutoff for inclusion in the next session of In the Garden is this Friday, April 23rd at 6 p.m. to be answered on Tuesday, May the 4th. Please include your email in case we need to follow up with you, and we'll make every effort to answer your questions on the air, but if we run out of time on our show, we'll provide you an answer by email. Bev, are there any questions in the comments?
No, we didn't get any today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bev, for what you do for us, too. Thank you, Kat and Ronnie, and thank you all out there for joining us. Our next In the Garden program will be May the 4th. Remember, if you have any questions, please contact us at the link on the screen, and we hope to see you next time.